Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer based in Charleston, South Carolina, who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is presented this year by Townsend Automotive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The Honda CR-V has been my favorite vehicle in Honda's lineup for years because it has great gas mileage and can haul a vintage furniture find with ease. In fact, it's so easy for getting out there in general, from the beach to the mountains to even the next photo shoot for a Southern travel article. Purchasing a CR-V from Townsend Honda means purchasing from a family-owned company built on service and connection with its customers, and they want to remind you of the joys of a jaunt down the road. Visit townsendhonda.com for current inventory, or if you're in West Alabama, stop in. Townsend Honda salutes local entrepreneurs, from restaurateurs to podcasters, and they welcome you to be part of a community that does the same. This week is American Craft Beer Week, which celebrates independent breweries. One of the most unique stories I've discovered in this genre is Tennessee Brew Works in Nashville. CEO and President Christian Spears once was a derivative trader on Wall Street with a focus on emerging market government debt. But he wanted to remake his life into something different. While he had always loved craft beer from his college days bartending, and through the years developed beer knowledge and appreciation while traveling the world, he eventually delved into homebrewing, and the path became clear. Tennessee Brew Works is Tennessee through and through, from ingredients to labeling, and their commitment to sourcing local yields delicious results in every glass. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Christian.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine. We should get this out of the way.
Yeah, just get it out of the way.
Cheers.
Cheers. There you go. It's afternoon, so we're good.
That's good. I am sipping. Can you talk about this beer that I'm sipping today?
Oh, yeah. You were sipping the Extra Easy Ale, and that was one of our first beers we ever brewed. That actually was a home brew once upon a time.
Awesome.
We call it an English pub ale. We've even just called it an amber sometimes, but it's technically an English amber, but the real style is extra special bitter. This is a very classic English style. I actually lived in London for a little while back in the day for my job, and at the time...
Back in the day when you had to wear suits?
Yeah, I did.
I know what you did.
Oh,
I've read
man.
it. We've talked about it.
Yeah. So back when I was over there, we were, I was out one time with a buddy, and he had been there for quite a while, both, expats. And he was like, you got to try this beer. It's a bitter. And, I was like, I just don't like bitter beers. This is 2003, by the way. So he's like, it's not bitter at all. I'm like, it's literally called a bitter. Come on, man. And so, buy it for you. I'm like, I'm not going to like it. So finally I drank it. This is pretty damn good.
I like a malt, It's
malty. It's not bitter.
Right.
It's,
I like that malty. I'm not as much of a hop person. So on the other end of the spectrum,
Well, actually, I grabbed the Wildwood Flower, which is a Belgian honey blonde. So definitely not hoppy either. So you and I both went a certain route today. Usually, if there's someone in the room drinking craft beer, they got a big hoppy IPA in front of them. But I guess we bucked the trend. But, one thing I'll say about the beer you're drinking and the beer I'm drinking is they're both very culinary minded. And I think we both have pretty developed culinary palates. And that's a maltier beer that you're drinking, has stone fruit esters and a lot of great things that pair very well with so many dishes, especially things that have like a citrusy backbone to them.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a roasted duck with a citrus glaze would be really nice with us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one I'm drinking is like this Belgium spice, how much I describe it. We used wildflower and sourwood honey blends into the beer as well. So this is beautiful with all kinds of fish. Of course, with anything with a honey glaze, if you really want to get into harmonizing.
It doesn't have a super, there's not a bunch of residual sugar in that. So you've got the...
God bless you for talking about this.
You've got the depth of that honey. Honey has a depth that like table sugar doesn't, right? So that's why people will use it. But during the process, that a lot of that sugar is consumed by the yeast, right?
Yeah, it needs to be converted. And, like I said, bless you for talking about this because, when back when you're home brewing and so forth, when you're doing, you get poor attenuation, lots of residual sugars, you end up with a sweeter beer. That can be fun for a second, but with that comes with all kinds of consequences. So it's sweeter. And as palates develop further, I think it's a little harder to enjoy layers.
Right.
And complexity. When something's sweeter, it's a little more muddied. And
it literally coats your taste buds. And good attenuation, you can actually get the layers, the depth, all the elements in it. You get the honey in this particular case. Right.
And one of the byproducts of good attenuation is caloric. It's less caloric. Right. And thus residual sugars equal less hangover. You sleep a little better. You wake up a little better. So, when you have higher quality wines, you have high quality spirits and beer, I tend to favor drier.
We should probably say then, like, there is a term in the culinary realm called Pinot Grigio drunk, right? Where you're just as much on a sugar high as you are on an alcohol high.
Look, I'm in my late 40s, so I just say talk about the 80s and how white zin and it was dominating weddings and so forth. I wasn't exactly participating, but I'm certainly aware. At that time, people were just happy to drink that, and it was fine. Terrible hangovers. The calories were terrible and all that. But eventually, people started to recognize the difference. Eventually, people ventured out. And, once your palate...
In the American palate.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant. And once you kind of develop your palate, you don't devolve, And then, of course, the movie Sideways came out. Yeah. And all of a sudden, everyone's an expert. Yeah, exactly.
So Christian and I are talking like old friends because in a way we're old friends. This is my third visit to Tennessee Brew Works. And actually, I recorded one of my first podcasts here with Chris Chamberlain.
That's right.
I think it was maybe like episode 15 or something like that.
I'm going to throw 6 years ago.
Yeah,
is that possible?
6 years ago. Yeah. 6 years ago. A lot has happened, but I was excited to come and talk to you today because in the interim, I really become interested in local grains. I've written about local grains for Savoir, and I talk a lot about eating local. And I think the next frontier past that farmers market veggie stand, eat local, is really this idea of the commercial grain production and really working with local grain producers, whether that comes from a bakery, that comes from a distillery or brewer. That's really been a focus of Tennessee Brew Works since the beginning, correct?
That's right. And it's the foundation of our beer. And then actually, if you come to the actual tap room, you'll see our food program. We're trying to source locally. It's a push across the country. It's wonderful. You're buying from your own community. You're putting money back into the community. You're literally helping your neighbor in some way. But on the beer side, we actually create so much. We create so much from using grains that we're shipping in from out of state, shipping in from out of country.
Right.
And agriculture is the number one industry in Tennessee. Why the hell are we buying our grains from out of state? But, it's not as simple as that. You got to malt the grains. You have to prepare them.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a malt house
No.
here in Tennessee?
Not currently, but there are several groups in the works right now. And we work with Brandon Witt at Beatty Farms.
Yeah.
And the original experiment started with trying to create grains that we could use, brewer's grains. He would grow the grains and we'd have to ship them off, have them malted, and bring them back. And that's what we've been doing, this grand experiment, to just prove the viability of growing the barley here, for example.
And that's why so many brewers don't use local grains.
It's more expensive.
One, it's more expensive.
It's a pain in the ass.
Number two, you don't have an organized supply chain.
That's right.
So you're having to build that. And number three, your volume.
That's right.
So how, on average, give me some stats. How much are you buying?
We ran the numbers last year, and we had been doing it for about 2 years, and we were close to 200,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. So in their world, that's nothing. That's just tip of the iceberg of what he can do.
Right.
So
at
we're
the malt house or the
or
the
Brandon,
growers.
even Brandon, yeah. So that we're just small potatoes compared to the potential. But we have to go down this long road to determine viability. In the end, the brewers don't want to invest in something that brings uncertainty to their end product, and the farmers don't want to grow if they don't have buyers.
Right.
And so everybody's just staring at each other, and somebody has to take a leap of faith. So we spent a lot of time with Brandon at Beatty Farms and said, let's take this leap of faith together. We're just going to dive headfirst into the deep end. And it's costly. He doesn't make very much on it. And we're spending at least 15% over market just to buy those grains and keep them Tennessee.
Well, why do it then?
It's absolutely worthy effort. I mean, I started out by saying it's a 5-year plan. And then I've more recently said it's a 10-year plan. You know what? It might be a 20-year plan. But we're looking for a structural shift in how this happens, because at the end of the day, again, agriculture is the number one industry in Tennessee, but like the number one export is like spirits. And we have Jack Daniels and George Dickel and this huge complex of spirits exporting out. They can use the barley as well. And, those two things combined in the fastest growing industry, at least this is, probably a good year old now in stat, but it was the brewing industry, beer brewing industry, craft breweries. We're the fastest growing. So think about those three things I just told you. If we can find a way to control our own supply chain, we're manufacturers, so we are derivatives of, agriculture. We can mitigate all kinds of things like, geopolitical risks, tariffs, weather, there's a flood in North Carolina, which is where, our malting facility is, we're shut down. We can't brew our beer if we can't get those supplies, all kinds of things, interstate trade, just too, taxation goes along with that. At least we can put our tax dollars back into Tennessee. Just so many benefits that were derived if we can figure this out that transcend Tennessee Brew Works, the craft brewing industry. They literally start putting money in the pockets of the farmers, people we know. And I mean, life-changing amounts.
Right. Buying 200,000 pounds of grain. Right. It's a drop in the bucket, but that is a needle shift.
We just paid for one's employees,
Right.
It's a pretty big deal that when we write that kind of check to those local farms, you really can change their lives. And, there's been so much difficulty in the farming industry when you think about what's happening to dairy. In Tennessee. Dairy's very difficult on Tennessee farmers. I mean, this is pretty, I'm oversimplifying it, but if you can grow corn, you can grow barley.
Right.
And you can grow corn in Tennessee. So, we got to make adjustments to our mill, to handle the grains, because the grains are a little different in each area, right? Our shells are a little thicker, a little bit smaller, very robust inside, so, they got to be modifications made. And I'm very fortunate to work with a guy named Matt Simpson, who's forgotten more about brewing than I'll ever know. He's amazing. He's been brewing professionally since '94, and he is so excited and spends a lot of time on this subject matter. And in that context, he's figuring out ways to, work with people to help with their, the milling process and so forth.
So I should say that because it's Saturday, and we're sitting in the brewery, and there are people downstairs having fun, and there's music, and there's activity happening around us. We should probably talk about how those grains really affect the flavor. because it boils down to flavor. I mean, I should mention you're a numbers guy. So like if you can't sell the beer, right? Or it isn't worth that 15% upcharge that you're having to pay on that other end, then you're not going to be successful, right?
You know, at the end of the day, when we did our first big batch, and it wasn't meant to be a big batch, we were trying to just do something very small. And we just gotten a call out of left field from Costco, and we had never worked with them before. And we're a small craft brewery, and it's a pretty big call to get.
Yeah.
We kind of had to up the game a little bit on the size of the batch. So the original batch ended up being much bigger, and we're all sitting there, and, you know, at the end of the day, we didn't know exactly how it's going to come out. Mm-hmm. You know, you can make all the best guesses in the world, you know, and architects talk about this all the time. They measure it out when they finally go to pour the concrete and they find out they're, you know, foot too long or something, you know, like this happens all the time. And so we had that, you know, hold your breath moment, but it's better. It's a perishable good. You're buying it close to the source. It should be better. And it was. We actually did side-by-side experiments, and the grains we were getting, the end product on the beers we were using it in, you can really tell. They weren't very hop-forward beers or anything like that. They're a little bit more grain-driven, and you could really analyze and ascertain a difference in a positive way.
For Southern Fork listeners that don't get the chance to nerd out on grains like I do, or come in and, you know, climb those little stairs and look down there and see things bubbling away into a fermentation tank, there's more stuff in grains that you're sourcing locally because they're usually fresher. They haven't sat in a warehouse or at a dock or, you know, at a port. I mean, you know, we're in a silo. The supply chain is shorter. So there's just going to be more oil. There's going to be more sugar. That stuff hasn't started degrading. It's just like when you get a carrot. You know, you get that 99-cent bag of commodity carrots at your grocery store. It's better to eat the carrots when you get them, but they'll last in your fridge for a month or two.
But it's better at the Franklin Farmers Market. Or it's going to be better. It's going to be better.
Of course. But, you know, that stuff, just because you can hold an apple for a year doesn't mean it's not best from the tree, right?
That's right. And that's true here. I mean, that's definitely the case. I mean, there's some brilliant producers of grains all over the world, and we work with some people even overseas that make some primo wonderful stuff. Because we're talking about perishable goods, and if you're able to source it closer to you, then it's always going to have a couple steps up in quality.
This is a long way from finance.
You know, my father and I have talked about this over years. He was a small businessman as well, and he actually worked in the art field, and he would say, unfortunately, I spend 95% of my time not working with art. And I would say in the beer world, it's not as bad. You know, I get to work with beer a lot more, working with beer right this second.
We're both clocked in with beer.
But, you know, at the end of the day, unfortunately, you're almost like working to earn your right to enjoy the art. And I think that's very true in the beer industry, because beer is a controlled substance. You know, we are highly regulated. There's a very entrenched 3-tier system in terms of manufacturing, distributing, and selling it. It's highly taxed. The taxation discussion seems to be kind of ongoing too. And so we have to really be involved in the politics to protect the business and the industry. So it's pretty complex. And I mean, an MBA wouldn't have helped. You know, it's well beyond that. So
let's go back in time just for a minute. And
boy.
I know, right? Not to the 80s and those white Zen weddings, okay? We'll fast forward a little bit beyond that. Can you talk to me about what captured your creative imagination when it comes to beer?
Oh, you know, I mean, it's even steps. You have to step even further back than that. You know, I have lots of friends still in finance and so forth, but I was making a living in wealth reallocation. That's what I did. I was a trader. I worked in emerging markets. I think we did some good things for governments.
This podcast is wealth reallocation, just the wrong way. Just kidding.
But I definitely, I left at actually a really strong point in my career. And I just had this moment where I really wanted to create. So it was more of a philosophical view of the choices I had made up to that point, which gave me lots of options in life. But bricks and mortars.
You wanted to be a maker.
I wanted to make something, I wanted to make an impact. And I had a pivotal moment in my 30s where I felt like I had a chance to reinvent myself. If I waited too much longer, that'd be a lot more difficult. Actually, just scarier. It's just scarier the more time that passes. When I left my job and I spent a good amount of time overseas doing philanthropic work and kind of just going on this sort of, brainstorm session about next steps. Craft beer was something I was doing in the 90s. I was part of that movement. I went to Chapel Hill for college and I bartended on Franklin Street.
That's where we bonded over tacos. That's right.
So in that time, there was a craft beer boom going on, and it fizzled away. Not as robust as the one we're enjoying now. I drank some really bad craft beer, but I was also excited to try things that people were just making. Homebrewing wasn't as big of a thing, but they were doing it at a little bit larger level than that. But lots of smaller organizations trying beer. In 2006, I was introduced to homebrewing by a friend who will just wore me out. Please try my beer. Please try my beer. And I'd had some bad experience with a buddy who was homebrewing wine, and it was terrible. I thought this was going to be that. If you know anybody who's a homebrewer, they are going to beg you to try their beer. And the reason they're doing that is what they're not telling you is how many times they've screwed up.
Right. Or exploded their pantry, or
it's all the things.
Overflowed their bathtub in the spare
Or the
bedroom.
beer was just terrible in the end, And they're not telling you that. So when they actually get a batch that tastes awesome, they won't shut up. It's like anybody who has a Peloton right now. They got to tell you about it.
I've already heard about yours. It's true.
So anyway, he got me to try it, and I was kind of reluctant, and it was pretty damn good. And you brewed this, and that kind of opened up my eyes a little bit. Now, I was living in New York City at the time, and I went to a place called Belgo, which is a Belgian restaurant. It was awesome. If anyone knows that place, it's great. I don't know if it's still there. It's been a long time.
It doesn't ring a bell, but I know a lot more about places in Chattanooga than I do in
And this New York City, and the Blind Tiger, and we would go to these places and just see what's going on. Get beers internationally, get beers in the region that you wouldn't see necessarily in a place like Nashville at the time. So that really opened me up as well. So I got excited. So fast forward to my adventures traveling around the world, doing the philanthropic work. That's when I started thinking more and more about that. When I returned, I spent some time with a buddy of mine, and we did a lot of homebrewing and discussing what next steps were going to be. What makes sense. And actually, we spent a lot of time on an idea of working with farms and CSAs. And we would homebrew while we were discussing these plans. And then one day, I left and got home, and because we were on his deck, and I got home and I was like, wait, why aren't we brewing? There's no beer around here. This is in Franklin. It was so hard to find any craft beer in Tennessee at the time. This is 2010. And that kind of started the whole thing. But the creative process behind it was like over a long period of time. And the journey that led me to want to be involved in craft beer was through multiple events. And so I don't know, that wasn't a quick answer, but
no, I love it. I love it. So yeah, we've talked about what's really in the glass, and all of your names and all of your beers have a connection to this place, to Nashville, and specifically to the state and the music industry. I mean, Wildwood Flower is a Carter family. Actually, it's a traditional Appalachian song, but
that's right,
attributed to the Carter family, and
because of the Bristol Sessions.
Yes.
In 1927, which is the name of one of our beers.
Right. Yeah. I just been writing about the Bristol Sessions. Not yet published. So yeah, and the artwork is beautiful, and you're right here in the middle. I mean, Third Man Records is right next door. You've got a band stand here. I mean, things seem to be moving forward. What's making you hungry, Christian?
What's making me hungry? I mean, I'm excited that we're sitting in here today, and there's customers outside ordering our beer, enjoying our food, and hanging out. I mean, it was just about safely. We have the table spread out. You come in, following the rules, and everyone here has been great. We've actually had very minimal issues with people, coming in here, and they've all been very willing to follow the rules. And as a result, I think we've had minimal trouble, But I'm just happy to be here right now. So, I mean, 11 months ago, I was talking to Chef a little while ago. There was like three of us coming to work every day. just trying to figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we were scared. I mean, anybody remembers that time? There was so many unknowns. We didn't know if everyone's going to turn into a zombie or,
right.
The
some of us did.
Yeah,
apparently.
I mean, it was scary, and I felt a responsibility. I wanted to survive individually, but it felt a responsibility. We had all these people working here at home. We didn't know how long we were going to pay them. We didn't know what the future held,
right.
and they didn't know, and they're asking questions, and you have no answers, and so that was the time. So fast forward 11 months later, I get very emotional thinking about it. We are operating, and I have most of my original team. We did, some people left, some people moved, during that period, but the core crew is still here. We're still working together. We did participate in the government programs, and we're able to keep people paid throughout. I'm proud of some of that we were able to pull some of that off. And that gets me excited. I mean, that's what gets me emotional and driven. And brewers are coming in with more ideas than ever. Matt, our head brewer, he's just nailing it, going crazy with ideas on brews. He's inspired. He's excited. He's been doing this a long time. When you're holding
your breath, then when you are able to let that go, right?
That's
or
right.
At least that part of it go.
Yeah, and you see that with the team in the tap room too. I mean, chef just came out with a couple new dishes. I mean, he's hitting home runs with everything, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And
our GM, you just met him a little while ago, mixology and so forth. He's just cranking things out with beer cocktails. It's fun.
That's all that.
Everyone's inspired. Fun. They're amazing. They're working well beyond anything they've been asked to do. It's just true creativity in its finest. So this is a byproduct of being in a very difficult state for a very long time and starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
All right. When it comes to your job, what is one aspect of your job that meshes like a puzzle piece with an aspect of your personality?
When I talk to people, over the years, sometimes you hear a comment from people. They go, "Hey man, it's business. It's not personal." I hate that statement because it's all personal.
It's all personal.
This place is my personality. It is amazing in the sense that I can come into work and have an idea, and I've got a half dozen people around me who can turn that idea into something real because they're artists themselves. They have a skill set, and it's just absolutely wild to watch that in play. We've done that a number of times recently, and the process is really cool. This place is me. That I don't know separation. There's no separation between the two. It is not business. It is all personal.
I love it. So what's keeping you up at night?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't sleep.
So what's making you go to sleep? That's what I should be asking. How do you sleep?
Thump on the head.
Yeah, I think we all, I mean, it's just part of the creative process, right? It's part of the creative process, and it is a double-edged sword sometimes.
Well, I would just say this last year has definitely, not improved that for me in the sense that, now, after this last year, I never want to sleep. Time is so precious, and you're taught that. And, the snap of a finger, you can't see your parents for, 6 months.
Yeah.
More, and time is precious. And I would say, not to go down this road too far, but, my regrets is every time a person in my life who I care about, who I love, has asked me to do something, I'm like, I can't. I'm becoming that yes person in my life. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Now, I have commitments here. Come on into the brewery. I just bring them into what we're doing here. Yeah. But I'm just saying yes to everything. So what keeps me up at night? That,
Yeah.
I don't want to miss any more opportunities.
Me neither. That's why I masked up and got on a plane. I also brought something on the plane. It is my magic picnic basket. So this I just reserved for Southern Fork listeners. Guests. Listeners, sorry. You don't get it.
That's a teaser.
So I can time travel. I can go back and conscript anybody to make any specific dish that you would like. You've lived all over the world. You've visited all over the world. I can also source product for you, and I can cook a little bit.
Now, I would love to bring you some of your favorite things in this picnic basket. They don't all have to go together. But what am I going to bring you?
Oh, God. To me, with food, I've had some amazing food, but it usually coincides, like what makes it so great, it usually coincides with an experience.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about a food and experience combo that just pops into your mind when I say like one of the best ones in your life.
Actually, it's terrible because the one thing that really popped in my mind immediately, and I'll just say it, you can edit it out if you like, but I just thought of an experience I had in 1998 in Prague in a restaurant that no longer exists, and I can't remember the name. And we went in there, and I was at an age where I just started making a real paycheck, and we just went in there and went nuts. It was all authentic Czech food. That is the truth. I can't recreate that experience.
Well, I came with the magic picnic basket.
Oh, okay. Well, and at the time was the way beer kind of correlates with that experience is that Pilsner Urquell was being made right down the road from where we were, the brewery. And you can get that here. It's not discussed very much, but it's a brilliant Pilsner. And we were getting it right down the road from the brewery, and it absolutely amazing. And so we had all these things together, and I was with two of my friends that I haven't seen in a very long time as the result of the environment. I still talk to them. And we just had this incredible, robust Czech, classic, traditional Czech meal with Pilsner Urquell with it as well. It was absolutely amazing experience. I would love to recreate that.
So what is one of those Czech dishes? Can you, if you can't remember the name of it, do you remember like what it was?
No, that's why I didn't want to go on this road too much. I would say the better answer for this podcast would be, I had a wonderful experience at a place called the Strip House in Manhattan. Have you heard of it?
No.
It is absolutely awesome. I just had, this is such a meat and potatoes answer, but it was just an incredible porterhouse.
Just meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes. And truthfully, we had a little bit of beer at that table as well. I would say we had a Belgian quadruple, if you're familiar. And then we just went hardcore with Malbec. So
Malbec.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
That was the
Malbec
thing.
was hot.
That was hot back then.
I know.
And
it was the pet
nat. What's that?
It was the pet nat of the early 2000s.
Where is it right now? I never hear anyone talk about it. But Argentine grapes.
There's just a lot of like really bad Malbec on the market, and I think that that's really diluting the conversation. But
Argentine grapes, that was it. So that was an experience. And then another place I'd say that same genre is Leal. Same thing, Manhattan. It's right off Park. That place is amazing. Sorry.
No.
I mean, we're a podcast, so people can't see me. But if they did see me, they know I'm a meat and potatoes guy.
Well, on that note, if people want to learn more about Christian and Tennessee Brew Works, obviously it's popular because you can hear a lot of people in the background.
That's not helpful to the podcast, but it's a good day.
You can go to thesouthernfork.com. I'm going to have links there as well as some images so you can see the beer and the face behind the voice. If you like what you hear, there are more than 210 episodes in the archive. So please subscribe. That way, things are always coming to your app, and you can dive into the archives whenever you would like. I'm going to dive into the rest of this beer. So thank you so much, Christian, for helping this work out today and for being such a great host for the other times when you're like, well, that was fun. She's never coming back. And then here I am 6 years later.
Thank you so much for including us and putting a little focus on our industry too.
Yeah.
It all helps, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's great to see you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hello and welcome to Talking with a Mouthful. Every time I do one of these shows, I get a lot of positive feedback of people wanting to share their favorite independent breweries with me, especially if they're in the South. And I love that kind of feedback, and I hope you keep doing it. But I also want to point out that means that almost all of us that are either speaking in a mic in her walk-in closet or listening to someone speak
in a mic in her walk-in closet, actually can name a local brewery in their town. We're in the midst of a big craft beer boom. It's been going on for a while in the U.S., and even though the United States, only a small percentage of the beer consumed here is craft beer, it is a much larger percentage than it was a few years ago. And because of this, it means that there's a lot of post-brewery grain or spent grain out there floating. So people are starting to tackle this new challenge of what do we do with all of this stuff? Because that's really creating a lot of waste in the industry. They're tackling the challenge in different ways. Some people are working with farmers to donate spent grain to livestock, and that would especially be useful in the South for pigs. Other people are contracting with bakers or other chefs that can use spent grain in their recipes or their bread. And then at Tennessee Brew Works, Christian and his team actually use some of the spent grain from the brewing process on the menu offerings at Tennessee Brew Works. And one of them is a delicious falafel. So there's a lot of possibility. There's still a lot of nutritional value and a lot of flavor in this spent grain. And so for somebody like me who is paid to observe trends and just industries, this is fascinating to see the creativity kind of bubbling up in this for people that want to reuse and recycle instead of just throw away. And if you happen to be a home brewer, you can recycle your spent grain if you'd like in your compost bin. And you can also recycle that beer that just was not good, like Christian was saying. It can go into your compost bin too. It really gets those microbes going in that compost bin. And you know how I'm like the compost queen over here talking about it at every chance I get. So enjoy your local beers and think about that spent grain. And cheers to all of you with American Craft Beer Week. And I will speak with you next week.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?